Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul, joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia for the Paul Farrington Show. Ziggy, we're back. It's been a while, but it's great to be back. Yep, it's always time for a round of applause when the group gets back together. Hopefully, Jack and Zach will be back next week. Jack's recovering from the flu, and Zach actually has been promoted at work, so it should work out pretty well for him to rejoin the crew here. And we can't wait for that. It's always more fun when the four of us are going. So that should be the new normal as we transition out of the 2024-2025 NFL season and get closer and closer to the start of the new league year. So Ziggy, let me say, great job, by the way, on the Matthew Stafford video while everyone was away, Jack recovering, and I was off skiing in Colorado. That turned out really nice.
Well, yeah, it's the Oscars are coming up, right? So I uploaded it in VistaVision so everybody could sort of see that new artistic medium.
Yes,
so I wanted to pay homage to that. So that's why it looked a little bit strange. But look, to capture an artistic vision, sometimes people aren't going to understand. It is what it is.
Oh, yeah, you walk out on a limb, Ziggy, and frankly, it paid dividends. People noticed. The wide shot of Robert Ziggy Ziegler. So if you guys are enjoying that content or this content, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If it's pretty funny, when you don't put out videos on YouTube and you're a sports show like us, the fluctuation in subscribers added versus dropped kind of stops. Like, you don't really add anyone else. So we were just watching. We got over 18,000. We're like, let's go. Don't put out a video for 7 straight days. We dipped back under. So if you're watching, please help us get back over 18,000 so we could celebrate once again. If you can't listen or watch on YouTube, you can always listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Before we jump into the football content, Ziggy, it's going to be a lot of fun today when we go through it here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Jalen Hurts and Travis Kelce. So they've been in the news lately. Jaire Alexander possibly leaving the Packers. Where might Aaron Rodgers go now that it's official that he won't be coming back as a Jet? We'll talk about that. Maybe even Matthew Stafford again, briefly, revisit that. I do want to ask you, Ziggy, so I was off in Steamboat Springs skiing this past week. Say that 5 times fast. Are you a skier? I can't imagine you as one, but I know you've been all over the place. Has skiing ever been a hobby for you?
I've done some Nordic skiing, but no, not really. I was never big on skiing.
I find it fun, but the people, our friends who we went skiing with, Ziggy and I's friends from college, excellent skiers. I mean, they are just really good. A few of them grew up in Denver. A few of them grew up consistently going on ski trips with their family. And I was like, I found myself in the wrong crowd a few times. They're like, hey, let's head over here. I'm like, all right, let's go. And, if you're a fairly new, or I've skied a few times in my life, I can get down to blue. But when you go down to black and you're not exactly confident as a skier, it can end. Near the last day, I'm like, let me try doing a spin. And I tried to spin and almost like, that's not the way my leg's supposed to bend. And luckily got out of there pizzaing my way down the hill with just a minor leg injury, as opposed to tearing something up in my knee, which probably was going to happen next if I didn't calm down. So I was just curious if you were a skier, because it's fun. I personally prefer the beach. Would you say beach over ski trip?
I'm a big hiker. So I like the mountains, but neither the beach nor skiing really do it for me. Give me a national park all day that you can just hike through.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are into the hiking in national parks. I love a beach. Just put me on a beach, put a pina colada in my hand, maybe a little Jimmy Buffett. Oh.
I think it's just because my parents live right by the beach. The beach has sort of gotten old.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's just there for you all the time, maybe. Like, we have the Jersey Shore.
If you love to surf, they live in San Clemente, California. It's the surf capital of the world.
So have you gone surfing?
No, my parents moved there after I went off to college, so I never learned how to surf. My dad's learning how to surf, though, and he, too, has had some things in his leg made perhaps not the right way.
I've never, with surfing, just my feet dangling in the ocean. That's always been, maybe I've watched Jaws one too many times, but in the back of my mind, I'm very uncomfortable floating in the ocean when I can't touch the bottom. I just don't like thinking about what could be. Jack's always talked about if you could drain the ocean and just see what's out there, even 100, 200 yards out, he's like, people will never go swimming in it again. And that's my thought. It's like, if I'm out there just on a surfboard, I'm not terrified, but like, I'd rather be on land or in like knee deep water in a chair than out there in the middle of the Atlantic or Pacific. So, all right, a little vacation talk is nice. Hope everyone's going on vacations, winter break time right now. If you have kids, going down south and getting some warm weather. Let's get into the NFL because there's a lot of news going on. It's a little slow, but there's still news coming in. The first question that we wanted to talk about, though, is following the Eagles Super Bowl win, the dominant win over the Chiefs. Jalen Hurts. He's been a pretty prominent topic in sports media lately. Is he an elite quarterback in your eyes? So, Ziggy, a lot of people are starting to turn in favor of Jalen after an entire season years of making fun of him and saying that he's carried by the roster. Are you going to continue that narrative, or are you going to go with the people who are now saying, hey, you know what? This is a Super Bowl champion who's played really well in the playoffs. Let's give him some more respect. Where do you come down?
I think if him winning a Super Bowl changed your opinion on him, you're not thinking about this the right way. Like, look, he made it to the Super Bowl in 2022. It's just true. Now, you might say like a real playoff run again made a difference. But Jalen Hurts, in my mind, is basically the same player he's been since that breakout 2021 year where they got obliterated by the Buccaneers in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He's a solid quarterback. He's the single best, like, third and short or fourth and short player in the history of football, at least at his position. There's nobody better than that. He's an effective passer when you put good weapons around him, and he's good at operating an offense. Like, Jalen Hurts is a weapon for this team. He's not the number one weapon. He's not even the number two weapon. But Jalen Hurts lets you do things that no other quarterback can. There is no other quarterback in the NFL that can operate drives like Jalen Hurts does. The Eagles are known for this. It's like 8, 9, 10-minute drives that just suck the air out of opponents. Yeah, Packers fans, you remember this from last year. Like, if you give the Eagles the ball with 9 minutes left in the game, you might not get it back.
Ziggy,
or if you get it back, it'll be too late.
Do you remember the Vikings-Eagles game from, I think, it might have been 2022 at this point.
I try not to.
I think it was week 2 of the season. And there was just one drive where we couldn't stop them. So like running down your throat, tush pushes, everything, like 6-7 minute drives to just kill the clock. And I remember watching this thinking to myself, like, this team, when they get in a groove between Hurts and, now adding Saquon, you see what they have with him. But between the offensive line and Jalen with his legs and now Saquon on the ground, they can get into these moments where they are purely unstoppable.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Jalen Hurts is very, very good at what he does. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. And I always say this. It's very hard with players to separate like how good we think they are over the actual results on the field.
Yeah.
I hate saying that when a player does great every year and their team keeps winning games, they're no good, or when a team does terrible every year, they aren't, especially at the quarterback position. There were several games during the postseason this year where Jalen Hurts basically disappeared, right? He had 65 total passing yards in one. He had 112 in another. He took a bunch of sacks this postseason. He took 13 sacks in 4 games, which is just crazy. On the other hand, they won a bunch of games and he's been good. So is Jalen Hurts elite? I don't think so. I would not put him with the NFL's elite, but he has a unique set of talents that no other quarterback does. And the Eagles offense is built to maximize that. So I don't think he's one of, say, the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd expect the Eagles to have one of the 3 or 4 best results consistently in the NFL, as long as he's quarterbacking that team, because they know what they're doing.
And the NFL is hard. I completely agree with what you said in the beginning there. The NFL is a little different than if you're looking at the NBA or some of these other sports where it's so team reliant, right? Remember the season that Joe Burrow just had right now, and they didn't even make the playoffs because the defense was that bad. They had 4 of the 9 games where a team scored 31 points and lost was from the Bengals. It's very team-oriented football more than any other sport, so to say. So Jalen Hurts, I do think, to a degree, he is carried by that roster. It's a great roster. But I'm also with you where you say, hey, this guy's 37-10 over the past 4 seasons. Or I'm sorry, 3 seasons in the regular season. 37-10. Now with the Super Bowl and with another Super Bowl run in his back pocket. That's hard to do. Like, I don't care who you are. Joe Burrow has not done that. Josh Allen has not done that. Now, the Eagles do have a better team. And that's where you have to acknowledge that, Jalen benefits from that. But most quarterbacks aren't going to, even with a very talented team, go on the types of runs that the Eagles have had. And I do think that stems back to Jalen Hurts being a winner. He's been a winner everywhere he's gone. And you see the reels now on TikTok and Instagram about him, overcoming the challenges at Bama, overcoming the doubters in the NFL. I wouldn't put him as a top 4 quarterback either. I wouldn't put him in that class with Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. I'm not even sure I'd put him at 5, but I would say he's definitely a top 10 quarterback in the league and someone that you believe in to win games. And at the end of the day, that's what matters in the NFL, winning football games. And Jalen Hurts does that. Sure, it might be a little unconventional at times, but he's a winner, and I'd want him on my team. So I would agree with you. I'm not going to say he's an elite quarterback, but he's a guy that should no longer be getting the flack that he's been getting for several seasons now.
Yeah, and I don't know why he was getting so much flack. He
Totally.
put together, I mean, the 2021 season was his breakout year. It was after a rookie year. They sort of showed up. I get that they didn't have a perfect season. I get that they got bounced in the postseason. 2022, you go to the Super Bowl. 2023 is an off year. And then no matter how good this Eagles team looked all year, people were questioning him. I'll be honest, I was questioning him a little bit, but I didn't think he was a terrible quarterback. I was just suspicious of everything else around the Eagles staying at the level it was. But he's a quarterback you can not just win with, but again, because of the kinds of things he can do so well, there's no quarterback like him in the NFL. And as long as you're in that class, who cares if he's elite or not? He's a great player. He's got a great story. There's a decent chance this won't be his last Super Bowl. You got to be a fan. Unless, I mean, he plays for the Eagles, so you don't have to be a fan. If you were on any other team, you'd have to be a fan.
Yeah, I mean, he's the exact guy you want leading your franchise. Always says the right thing, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, cool under pressure. I mean, the best game of his career is still probably that first Chiefs Super Bowl where he was just dominant. And I mean, look, yeah, the guy's been awesome in the playoffs too most of the time. He had like this year, a couple weird games in there. But I'm not going to get on him too much for the snow game with the Rams. Like that was another bizarre game when you're playing in those sorts of weather conditions. Yeah, I'm totally on board with Jalen Hurts being he's a fringe top 10 quarterback. Is that what you said?
No, I think he's better than that.
What, like maybe 7 or 8?
I think he's a fringe top 5. Like, I don't think he gets in the top 5, but I think he's like, who are the guys above him? Patrick Mahomes, undefeated past 2 seasons. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. He's beaten all those guys. Like, this is the question I think if you're a Jalen Hurts skeptic, you have to ask yourself, after this season, what more do you want from him? Like, what could he show you more than what he's shown over the past couple seasons? I think people are going to say they want him to become more consistent as a passer. Like, remember, you can't forget this year, there was the whole A.J. Brown drama. Like, there was drama in Philly, and a lot of it was around Jalen Hurts' abilities as a passer. But, winning a Super Bowl cures all those things. And that's something you want to see him become more consistent there. But, again, that's part of what makes Jalen Hurts kind of one of the uniquer quarterbacks in the league is sometimes he is off throwing. But he's such a threat on the ground that does make up for it. He's not like Lamar, but that tush-push is unstoppable. And it is a play that you saw it cost Buffalo the divisional round game. But I'm with you. You talked me into that top 5 there, because after the 4 quarterbacks, if you're thinking who's in that 5 spot right now, like Jaden Daniels will probably come up. You'll probably have Justin Herbert or CJ Stroud, right? Those are the guys that we're talking about now for the top 5. And Jalen Hurts is probably in that group, right? He's done somewhere in there. He has done substantially more than anyone you could put below him, and quite a bit more than just about anybody above him.
Yeah, if you're saying Herbert, Daniels, and Stroud as the next group, maybe you could talk about throwing Stafford or Love. Some people might put Goff in there, but let's say you're talking Stroud, Daniels, and Justin Herbert. I think you can make an argument for Jalen Hurts above almost any of those guys. Like
he's done a heck of a lot more than them in the playoffs.
Yeah. So I would probably take all of them over Jalen. Like I probably would, but I think he's in that group.
I wouldn't.
So
I'm taking Jalen Hurts over all of them. Again, I just think there's a bigger gap between him and the top 4 than there is between him and the guys right below him.
Yes, I would agree with that. The top 4 is clearly cemented. But when you're talking about, the very, very best in the world there, it's not bad to be in that second group. If you have that second group there, you're probably should be going to the playoffs. Okay. Another thing that's been going on lately, Travis Kelce. People are talking about whether or not he's going to retire, and the Chiefs have given him the deadline of March 14th as to whether or not he'll return for next season. And I've just been listening to talking heads in the sports world, and everybody seems to be saying, time to pack it up, Travis. The Chiefs are better off if you pack it up, Travis. Like whether or not they won't admit it, but they're rooting for Travis Kelce to retire. And I'm just sitting back here thinking to myself, why? Like, Why would you want him to retire? I mean, he didn't have a tremendous Super Bowl or a great playoff run like he did the year before, but he still finished fifth in the league for tight ends and receiving yards. He was third in tight ends for receptions this year. Like, you still got very good production from him. It wasn't the Travis Kelce that we've seen over the course of his career, one of the best, if not the best tight end ever. But the guy can still play. And at the end of the day, you want that dude in your locker room. That is we talk about winning culture. That is one of the winningest players in the history of football right there. Sets the tone for this team. I can't imagine a world where the Chiefs would be happy with him retiring. Can you? It was mind-boggling to me why people are saying this.
I'm going to tell you how crazy this is. I searched who should replace Travis Kelce for the Chiefs. I was curious who people were talking about. He's old, he's washed up, he's not who he used to be. You know who the number one suggested replacement was by like all these media people?
Who?
Zach Ertz. What? Like, what are we talking about? Like, who's coming in that's better to replace Travis Kelce? Like, I think that if you talk about him taking a step back in the offense, I think that might make sense. But he's a competitor. Everything around the offense, I think, is going to get better next year, with the exception of Patrick Mahomes, who is going to stay elite. The receivers should be better. The running game should be better. The offensive line will hopefully perform better. They'll finally get a little healthier. Like, again, I don't think Travis Kelce is a competitor. In game, he wants the ball a lot. He acts like that. But I think he's aware that his role is shifting. He just gets fired up on the sidelines. I don't understand how getting rid of a guy who's playing like one of the better tight ends in the league, with every team he plays zeroing him every single week as this is the guy. Why are you getting rid of him instead of getting a little bit better around him?
Yeah, that's the other thing here, is that a lot of teams go into games with Kansas City and the plan is stop Travis Kelce first.
Because this year, who else was there?
Yeah. Stop Travis Kelce first, and then worry about everyone else. And again, the Rashee Rice injury, you can't understate how important or overstate how important that was for Kansas City this year. He was on his way to having a fantastic season in KC before that injury. I really think he was on the verge of becoming one of those breakout candidate receivers, and that hurt my fantasy team as well. That's one reason I was so particularly inclined to watch Rashee Rice this season. But even if you look at the playoff game against the Texans, for Kelce, 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Right? That was the playoff Travis Kelce that we saw from a year and a half ago when they went on the Super Bowl run to win their second in a row. Like, he still got it. He's just not going to have it every single night. And when the teams are game planning against you, that opens things up for guys like Rashee Rice and guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who I don't even know if he'll be back in KC next year, but
someone will be.
Nonetheless, having Travis Kelce on the field is better than not.
Yeah, are we forgetting that in the playoffs this year against one of the best defenses in the NFL, he went for 120 yards and a touchdown?
Yeah, like what are we talking about here? Why would you want this guy? How could you want him to retire? It just makes no sense to me why anyone would think the Chiefs are rooting for that, because it's not like tight ends are growing on trees. It's a position where you can easily just pluck anyone in and they'll be great. I think it's a position where you could get average production from most people. But Travis Kelce, the leadership, and I really think that mentality he brings is different from anyone else you're going to bring in the league. And if you're removing that from the locker room, unless you have a huge talent upgrade, like a Brock Bowers guy come in, a rookie who's just going to light the world on fire, and still you can also, by the way, if you're Kansas City, go get another tight end and let him learn under Kelce for a year.
Yeah,
right?
they love running 2 and even 3 tight end sets. We saw that with Noah Gray, right? Who didn't break out, I think, like people were hoping. But look, who are the free agent tight ends you can bring in? The best by far is Jawan Johnson, who I think is going to get a big deal because there's nobody left. Otherwise, it's Mike Gesicki, who's just a slot receiver. Tyler Conklin, Zach Ertz. Like, those are the best tight ends available in free agency. The thought that you're going to upgrade by jettisoning Travis Kelce, who had 800 yards, a handful of touchdowns, and has been good as a leader on this team, I think people are just tired of seeing him in State Farm commercials.
People are just tired of the Chiefs. That's really what this comes down to. And
I'm tired of the Chiefs, but at least I'll be honest about it.
He's coming back. There's no world where Travis Kelce, one of the great competitors of the game, is going to walk away after a humiliating Super Bowl loss while he's still playing good football. It's just not happening. So, like, we could talk about this all we want. We could make up these crazy scenarios that the Chiefs don't want him back. He's coming back, and the Chiefs are going to be awesome again next year. They'll probably win the Super Bowl. So like, this is a conversation that I think if anyone wants to tell me that we're wrong, I'll happily disagree with them. It's just a dumb conversation to have.
Yeah, the only reason Travis Kelce would retire this year is if he wants to get in the Hall of Fame a year sooner.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
Basically. Well, the reports are that him and Taylor Swift are both taking their time. They don't have any big commitments coming up. So
didn't they get a dog?
I don't know, but you're more in line with this stuff than I am. I would love to see your feed on Instagram, just Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, TikTok.
Yeah, right. Well, you know me, I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan.
Yeah. Well, your artwork was in her music video. You've been featured. Let's go over to the Packers. The reports are coming out right now that Jaire Alexander, there are strong indications in Green Bay that Jaire Alexander and the Packers are done, that they're on their way towards a split here. And the major contributing factor here is that Jaire just hasn't been healthy for a long time now. Played in 14 games over the last 2 seasons, 34 games over the last 4 seasons. And frankly, I understand where Green Bay's coming from. I mean, it's when you have a star player like that who you're paying a lot of money to perform. He's not on the field. Think about the end of this season. The Packers flamed out against the Vikings, flamed out against the Bears, flamed out against the Eagles. Having a guy like Jaire is pretty helpful in those situations, and he just hasn't been there. So I get it. But at the same time, Ziggy, we were talking about whether or not we would bring back Jaire if we were sitting in the Green Bay front office. And we were saying, yeah, because he is one of the best in the business. And we're kind of rolling the dice on him staying healthy, which might be a bad gamble to take. But when you look up and down that Packers cornerback room right now, you're also having Eric Stokes probably leave. Corey Ballantyne's probably leaving. You have a pretty bare room for quarterbacks. And this is a team that you think is capable of going on a Super Bowl run. Like, you're going to have to nail down one of the most important positions in the league against Justin Jefferson in your division, against Amon-Ra St. Brown, against DJ Moore. I think that letting Jaire go, they'll have plenty of money to be able to make a move, and they'll have draft capital to make a move. But it's hard to replace those kind of guys. Even for someone who's typically banged up like Jaire is, if you want to go on a Super Bowl run. So where do you come down on that?
So one thing to keep in mind is the salary cap's increasing a little bit more than expected. About $7 million more. It's going to go up to something around 280. We'll see in a minute. But a lot of people, I think, are going to be pointing at that and saying everybody's getting some more money. This is going to transform free agency. It's not. A couple $1 million extra will help you out if you're the Cleveland Browns and are trying to deal with whatever's going on there. It'll help you out if you're the 49ers and have like 20 extensions to sign, or the Minnesota Vikings. But realistically, this isn't going to make a big difference for teams in free agency. It'll increase rookie contracts a little, increase free agency a little. So the first question is, do I think Jaire is going to leave? And then does it make sense? And who will they replace him with? I'm not so confident Jaire is going to ultimately leave. Ooh. I think there's probably bad blood between both sides right now. There's no doubt about it. And this is not like insider intel or whatever, but him leaving just continues to not make sense to me.
You don't have insider intel?
Makes sense.
There's no one in Green Bay?
Oh, I mean, I can't reveal my sources, obviously. But no, look.
Sorry.
Here's the thing about Jaire, right? I think he probably thinks there's a big market out there for his talents. I think there's a lot of teams that are interested. I do not think there are a lot of teams that are interested in paying him at what he thinks he deserves to be paid. So going back to Green Bay, I think taking a pay cut, maybe playing on a 1-year contract where you're beloved, where there's an organization. I think even though they're not happy with the injuries, I think they like Jaire. I think they overcame whatever issues were happening a couple years ago, character-wise. The only way the Packers, I think, could possibly have an elite cornerback room is if Jaire comes back and they add around him. You're not getting multiple elite cornerbacks in free agency in the draft. It's just not happening. And for the price Jaire is at, the Packers have the cap space to keep him around on a pay cut. They can outbid some other teams.
You think he'll take a pay cut? I
just don't see why you'd let him go.
You think he'd take a pay cut?
He has to. They are going to cut Jaire Alexander. There's no question about it. They're not paying him at what his contract's at. And if he were willing to negotiate a pay cut with them, he would have by now. But once you cut him, there's no rule that says you can't bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
If
So,
you can make a better offer than a lot of these teams,
I just don't know if they cut him. I'm not sure. I'd be pretty surprised to see Jaire swallow his pride and go back for less money. That would just be a little surprising to me.
is going for less money to the New England Patriots really a whole lot better?
I'm not sure that Jaire's the kind of guy who would be willing to do that, though. He might think it's better to go to New England and just say, screw this, I'm not going back there. They don't value me.
It might be.
To win, I'd rather go with the Packers.
I think the Packers should really try and make it work as well as they can, and maybe they can't. But, assigning Asante Samuel or DJ Reed to a huge deal, I don't think. I mean, you might get slightly better performance than Jaire, but I don't think they're going to be huge upgrades this year. You can take a guy in the draft, but you just don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't think the Packers cornerback room will be a strength next year, but I think it can be a lot better if you bring Jaire back.
Well, that's the whole thing is you can't have it become a weakness because the team right now with Jaire, you look at them and you say we've said this many times, they're a few players away, a few studs away, so to say, from being a legitimate contender. But if you take Jaire off, I do wonder, they have a strong safety room now, and they were able to turn it around very quickly in 1 year. But you're going to have to hit on a draft pick at that point. And if you do go after a guy like DJ Reed, Asante Samuel, or Byron Murphy Jr., that is going to cost you a lot of money. And now the hope is that they play, right? That Jaire hasn't been on the field. So the hope is if you're going to sign one of these guys, with Jaire, who knows if he's even going to be on the field, and you're paying him a lot of money. With these guys, you're hoping that they're playing. So there's that trending in the right direction for you. It's just, again, if you want to win the Super Bowl, I think you're going to need to have one of these stud corners. I don't think there's enough there. I'm not going to be happy if I'm just trotting out Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, and a rookie.
So Keyshawn Nixon said this offseason, right after the season, he said he wants to be a number one cornerback. I just don't see it. I do not see. Keyshawn Nixon is he was the best corner on this team last year, and I'd grade him as a C player. I think that tells you how bad they were. I think he's a starter. I don't think he's anything more than that. You need a guy that can really take care of business. And you need two guys that can really take care of business. I don't see how the Packers are going to get there letting Jaire walk, but clearly they're confident in what the front office is going to be able to do to get better production out of Jaire for less money.
Well, and right now you're not totally confident in that pass rush either. So you're not confident in the pass rush. You let Jaire go. You're not particularly confident in your cornerbacks. That's where I think you start to say, all right, this is not going to be a bad defense without Jaire Alexander. They're not going to crumble and fall apart. But it's just, what is the upside? And that's where, if you're trying to be a Super Bowl team, you need to have a pretty high upside there. I don't unless the offense takes off, which they're supposed to do this year and didn't. You're going to need some strong defensive play, and I just see it being a hard time if they let Jaire go and don't get another guy who's established. You just got to hit in the draft. And to be fair to Green Bay, they've done that a lot. Remember we went through all the picks they've had recently? Like, they've been on fire drafting.
Yeah, but
you got to get lucky.
It's just that it is what it is, right? There's nothing else you can do.
They're going to have a very exciting offseason because there are a few holes here, few big holes that if they fill it correctly could vault this team into the upper tier. And Jaire is one of those. That's the cornerback's one of those positions, and we'll see what happens. So I think that's a fun story to follow with the Packers this year. Is how are they going to fill in this edge rusher and cornerback position and receiver? And now T. Higgins looks like he's probably getting the franchise tag in Cincinnati too. So that might that happened right while we were gone. I thought that happened.
Yeah,
or they're planning on using the franchise tag on him.
The window's open. They haven't used it yet, but they very well might.
The non-exclusive tag. Yeah, that's what I thought.
But we'll see. I mean, I'll say this much: if you're the Green Bay Packers, teams, you look at their first and second round draft picks over the past few years, barely half of them are still on the team. You compare the Chicago Bears, they're basically all still on the team, which is sort of weird. I don't exactly know why that.
Wait. What was that for the Packers?
Their first and second round picks have not done a good job converting into starters right now for the Packers.
Oh, but later in the draft, they've been on fire.
Yeah, so the question is I think the later round is higher variance. The question is just, I don't ever like going into the draft thinking we have to add elite talent at this position. You just never know what rookies are going to be able to do. Even players that go on to become great.
That's pretty.
They're just not there.
Fortunate position to be in to be able to sit back and be like, yeah, you know what? Hopefully we nail this. Well, you're a best player available guy.
Well, and the Packers, I think, have historically done a very good job not entering the draft saying we need elite talent at this position and we're taking the best guy there no matter what. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always work. I know people aren't happy with how it's worked out for them at edge rusher over the years. But in general, that's a better position to be in than having to lock in on a particular position and you have to get a guy there. So I expect the Packers to do something before the draft to address the position.
We'll see what happens in Green Bay. And we'll turn our attention here to wrap up the show. We're going to look at some of the quarterbacks here. And we'll start off with Aaron Rodgers, who I believe on Super Bowl Sunday, a little bit before the game, came out that he would not be returning to the Jets. Now, Ziggy and I did our reaction to the Super Bowl, and I think we briefly touched it at some point during that episode. It went for like an hour and 15 minutes. But since then, the only thing we've had come out is Ziggy talking about Matthew Stafford, and we'll get to him in just a second. But Rodgers won't be going back to Green Bay. To Green Bay. Rodgers won't be going back to New York, which is a lot of people wondering, all right, is Minnesota on the table? Could he be going to, what are some other places we've heard? The Vegas, right?
Have you heard what the latest chatter is? All the chatter is Rodgers to the Rams.
The Rams? Oh, yeah. I think Colin came out and said he'd trade Rodgers to the Rams and Stafford to like the Giants or something like that.
Diana Rossini's saying that she thinks it might happen. Like all the reporting now is burning behind Aaron Rodgers to the Rams, which I find kind of baffling. Why are you swapping out Stafford for Rodgers?
Well, that's if Stafford just wants to leave. Because Matthew Stafford, everything that we're talking about his wife's podcast every once in a while.
And Matthew Stafford wants his money.
Well, no, Matthew Stafford wants his money. They don't like that the Cooper Cup's gone. And I think there's kind of been some tension between Stafford and the Rams for a while now. Where
Sean McVay, quarterbacks get tired of him after a while. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's just if you're Matthew Stafford, you probably don't want your wife coming out saying, I'm open to an adventure. like we loved our time in LA.
Like the Rams leaking how much they love Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, exactly. Really, so I'm saying there's probably some bad blood between Stafford and the Rams there. And I think it's for the most part, it's kept under the rug pretty well. But every now and then stuff leaks out where you go, could you see him leaving potentially? It doesn't really make sense for the Rams to have him leave right now, given where the team is. I think with him, they were one play away against the Eagles.
Yeah, and going to the conference kind of situation. This is the kind of situation where an extra like $7 million in the salary cap actually means something. That's like $7 million you can just hand to Matthew Stafford that you weren't expecting to have.
I would not it just makes no sense if you're the Rams, or I guess Matthew Stafford depends where he would go. But if you're the Rams, there's no world where you want Aaron Rodgers over Matthew Stafford next year.
No, but here's what you say. You say, look, they had to go right into training camp last year to come up with a deal Matthew Stafford was happy with for one season. The Rams clearly are not all that eager to give Stafford a bunch of money and lock him in. If they were, they would have last year. That's the thing that's in the back of my mind and why I think he might be moving.
So are you saying that
Aaron Rodgers will be cheaper than Stafford? He's not going to ask for a big deal.
So wait a second. You're saying if Stafford and the Rams were to split, then Aaron Rodgers would be the next best option for them?
I think so.
But yeah, you're not saying you'd take Rodgers over Stafford for next year.
No, but I might take Aaron Rodgers over Stafford, handing Stafford a big 3-year deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just depends how much you think he has left in the tank. I think he's got
quarterbacks sitting behind Aaron Rodgers have had magic. Draft your guy, have him sit behind Rodgers, call it a day.
Wait, what are you advocating for? Well, if you're the Rams, what are you doing?
You know what? If you can get a first-round pick for Stafford, see ya.
And you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers? I see here Schefter. Aaron Rodgers would be thrilled to replace Matthew Stafford. But yeah, no crap.
Oh, I'm sure he would.
That's a great situation. You go in with Sean McVay, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, a young defense that's emerging. It's a perfect spot for a quarterback.
Yeah, you look at the other leaders in the betting odds. It's the Raiders, Colts, Titans, and Steelers.
The Steelers were the team. The Steelers were the team that I was going to talk about with Rodgers here.
Talk about him.
No, I saw there's a bunch of stuff here, but there's photos of Deshaun Elliott and Aaron Rodgers, and George Pickens is trying to recruit him. I think if you're Aaron Rodgers, again, Ziggy, can you read those teams? You said that the odds right now for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, the other teams of betting favorites, it goes the Steelers, the Rams, the Raiders, the Colts. Like, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, when you
can throw the Vikings in there if you want.
So between the four you said, the Rams, the Steelers, the Raiders, the Colts, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you're not going to the Raiders, you're not going to the Colts. Like, you're just not, right?
You're only doing that if they offer you more money than you could possibly refuse and unlimited roster control.
Yeah, and
which they might.
It's just I can't see it happening. I mean, not after last season. So if you're Aaron Rodgers, then what? It's the Rams and the Vikings, those situations you're looking at?
The Steelers?
I'm sorry, the Steelers, yeah.
Yeah, throw the Vikings in there. I don't think we want them, but throw the Vikings in there.
I think the Vikings actually make more sense than the Steelers, though. If I were the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm looking at it. Here's the situation in Pittsburgh. The offense is not good enough right now. Like that's been a problem for a while. They have George Pickens, and after that, I like Freiermuth.
They sometimes have George Pickens.
Yeah, they sometimes have Pickens. I like Freiermuth. I think he's fine at tight end. I like Najee and I like Warren. I think they're fine running backs, but they just don't have a very exciting offense. They need more in terms of playmakers there. And then you look at the rest of the division and you got to compete with Lamar Jackson. You got to compete with Joe Burrow. And if Aaron Rodgers is going to be a one-year guy there in Pittsburgh, do you really think that the addition of Aaron Rodgers will push you to a Super Bowl contender, especially with who you have to compete with right now? I just don't think it will for one season. I think for the Vikings it could, because you have Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson, and then just a great offensive skill set. But in Pittsburgh, it's who you're competing against, what you have right now. That's a better situation for me to just start over. Just start over at that position and start training everyone up for the future. I don't think the Steelers are a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl team. I just don't right now. So I would avoid it if I were the Steelers. If I were Aaron Rodgers, though, I think that gives you the best chance of all those realistic teams outside of... I don't think the Rams are actually that realistic.
I don't think the Vikings are either.
I think they're more realistic than the Rams are. Like the Vikings, it could make sense. 1 year, McCarthy heals up more, learns from Rodgers, and then you move on. But then the team's really good right now on offense. It's just... Yeah, I don't know if O'Connell's going to want to do that. He might be ready to go with McCarthy right now. But if you were the Steelers, would you want to bring in Rodgers?
What better option do you have?
Yeah.
He can, I mean, I don't think it's great.
Oh, I'm sorry. The option would be move on. Like, start over.
The Steelers are not a team that starts over.
And look where they are.
Look at the stars on this player. They're like 30-year-old plus guys on defense. Those guys don't want to start over. They want to play football.
I know they don't want to start over, but we've been doing the same thing.
There is a 0% chance the Steelers enter a rebuild at any point during our natural lifetimes. That's not what they do. If
so, then we have to shift and look at this from best case scenario. If Aaron Rodgers unlocks it for 1 year, can the Steelers win the Super Bowl? Yes, right? If you get great Aaron Rodgers, you can win the Super Bowl. It's just when you're playing the odds games, I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to see it all working out where it makes sense. It's just, I see it happen. And now Tomlin's a guy who can control people, right? He did it with Antonio Brown for so long, where once Antonio Brown was free from Mike Tomlin, he kind of went nuts. Tomlin can probably keep Aaron Rodgers in check. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers is as crazy as some of these other guys that have walked through Pittsburgh. I just don't think the Steelers are the right team for him. I think the Vikings are actually a good fit. But, all right, so right now, what's your prediction, Ziggy, between Stafford and Rodgers?
For
where they go next season?
For Stafford, I think the salary cap raise means he's going to stick with the Rams. I think ultimately they'll cave and give him money.
Me too.
Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to be a wild card. I think he's going to the Colts.
The Colts. Okay.
Colts love those aging quarterbacks. This Colts team is better than you think. Think about the records they've put up in quarterback purgatory for a while now. They've got better weapons than the Steelers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They definitely do.
They've got a decent offensive line. Jonathan Taylor, I hope, will be better next year. The defense is okay. I think that's a landing spot not a lot of people are paying attention to. They're in a lot easier division than the Steelers. I'll tell you that much. The postseason path is easier. I think that's a spot that actually makes sense.
It It is an interesting proposal, Ziggy. The Texans are your top competition. I mean, Houston's good, but you're not playing against Lamar or Burrow. I could see it. I could see that. It's just, would you give up on? That's giving. It's not necessarily actually giving up on Anthony Richardson either.
It's giving up on Anthony Richardson. But look,
I don't know. You don't think if you just sat him behind Rodgers for a year?
Here's what I would say about Anthony Richardson. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't get fooled again. That they say that in Tennessee, they say that in Texas, they say that in the White House. I don't believe Anthony. I was the biggest Anthony Richardson believer. I really thought he had it. It's been 2 years. He's gotten worse every single game he's played. With one of the better coaches for coaching those guys up, the team's gotten better around him and he's gotten worse. I don't care what mechanics coach he's seeing. I don't care if he's in the best shape of his life. I don't care if you hear he's totally rebuilt his throwing motion. I'm out on Anthony Richardson. I'm playing Jimmy G over Anthony Richardson.
You're done. You're just totally done.
What have you seen from Anthony Richardson that makes you think he can be one of the 28 best quarterbacks in the NFL? On the field, what have you seen from him?
I think
was the 47 completion percentage rate?
No, I was saying
the 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions.
I don't get on that. I was the guy when he came out of the draft that said accuracy is not something that should be trifled with at the quarterback position.
No, but it's somehow. Here's what I don't understand. It's gotten worse.
Yeah, he definitely regressed over the course of last season.
How Anthony Richardson regressed is beyond me. That's what I don't understand.
Well, remember week 1, he had to throw against the Texans, and people were like, "Holy crap! Yeah, that's the guy that we thought he could be before he got hurt last year." And then it just got worse and worse.
His first season, you saw wow plays. Some of the best throws of the entire week came from him. And you said, I believe he can do that consistently with some more time. The wow plays went away, and the bad plays got worse. Chris Ballard is on the hot seat. This whole Colts organization is on the hot seat, I believe. Actually, with Irsay as the owner, who knows? Like, people have not been on the hot seat when they should be. But if you're a Colts fan, you're fed up. Aaron Rodgers at least can play the quarterback position. Aaron Rodgers, whatever.
I mean, you talk about a blow up, right? Like, talk about if you're Chris Ballard and you're on the hot seat. Yeah, you're putting all your chips on Aaron Rodgers. And
if your choices are Aaron Rodgers or Anthony Richardson, those are the two guys who can save your career. Honestly, I'm putting Peyton Manning back there.
I would go Rodgers over Richardson. If I were next year, if you said who do you think gives the Colts a better chance, I'd probably go Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, I would go Peyton Manning over Anthony Richardson.
So you're totally done. You are completely gone.
I might go Eli over Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
No, I'm done.
I mean, I've been rooting for AR. We'll see.
I love watching him play football, but after 2 full seasons getting worse every game, I can't see it.
Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers, I think, would be the most fun. The Steelers or the Vikings. Like that would be him going back to Green Bay. That's must-watch TV. Him going to Pittsburgh, just the tradition there. And the chance of him sparking something with that team and having Rodgers, Burrow, Lamar in one division would be a lot of fun. I think he's going to end up with, right now, I'm thinking the Steelers for Aaron Rodgers. Even though if I were Pittsburgh, I probably wouldn't do it. But we'll see what happens. That's why we watch. All right, that'll wrap it up for today's show. Again, we'll be back next week. We'll probably start having more consistent content rolling out. We're coming up with our off-season plans over the next few weeks. It's a nice time for us to take a little chill pill before free agency kicks off and the machine starts turning again. So we appreciate you guys for being a little patient with our content schedule lately. We just need a quick break. And we'll be back with a lot more content and a lot more Ziggy over the next few weeks. So we'll see you then.